Welcome to Killiney Beach on this almost summer morning. The sun has started to come out. My name is Deirdre Black and I am the Heritage Officer with Dún Laoghaire County Council and Chair of its Civic Memorials Committee. So we're here this morning to unveil a memorial to Louie Bennett. This memorial was proposed to the committee by Councillor Denis O'Callaghan, and the location is chosen here because she lived just around the corner on St. Marie Avenue. And thank you very much to the Killiney Historical Society for that research and information. So I like to think that she would have come down here and gotten solace and inspiration from this amazing place as we do here today. This book has been sitting on my shelf for a while, and it starts with the line, "Putting women back into history." It's from 1991, and I suspect some people here might have been involved in it. And so that's 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, and this is ongoing work, putting women back into history. So to start our celebration of Louie Bennett, I invite Deputy Ivana Bacik to speak first at the request of An Cathaoirleach.
Good, Deirdre, thank you very much, and I just want to thank An Cathaoirleach Denis O'Callaghan for the really kind invitation to be here today. It means a lot to me, and I'm delighted to be here in Dún Laoghaire in the sister constituency, and I've just arrived from Dublin Bay South, where you'll be glad to hear it's raining. So the sunshine is out here in lovely Dún Laoghaire, and it's great just to see so many public representatives here. I just want to acknowledge councillors, obviously An Cathaoirleach Denis O'Callaghan, who I know will be speaking, councillors Carrie Smith, Letty McCarthy, who's here with her dog, Peter O'Brien, Jim Gildee, and our local area rep Thomas Joseph, who's here. And I do also want to acknowledge Niamh Brannock's family, Tom and Macdara Ferris, who are here, because whenever I'm out in this part of the woods, Tom, I think of Niamh, as I know so many of us do in the Labour family. And I also want to note our General Secretary Billy Sparks is here. So this is of course more than a Labour Day, however, a Labour commemoration, and far more than that. And as Deirdre has said, it is about writing women back into history, and it's hugely important that we commemorate the wonderful, the magnificent Louie Bennett, because she had such an incredible impact on Irish history. If you read about Louie's life, as I have done, and she's somebody who's of particular significance to me, I named one of my children after her, not everyone knows that, but if you read about her history, her life's work, she did an incredible amount of work on so much. Of course, in 1911, with Helen Chevenix's founding the Irish Women's Suffrage League, then going on to found the Irish Women's the Irish Women's Reform League as well, to campaign on social issues. So she was campaigning for suffrage from an early time. She was campaigning also on social conditions for women, and of course hugely significantly on the rights of women and men at work, through her work with the Irish Women Workers' Union, with which she is so closely identified. And she went on to represent Ireland internationally with the International Labour Organisation. She was also a noted international campaigner for peace and pacifism during World War I. And of course she was hugely involved in the independence movement through her work with the Irish Citizen and the workers' movement there. She campaigned for the families of locked out workers in 1913 with the Irish Citizen, and she went on to be very active and involved in ICTU as the first woman president of the Congress. Sorry about the train going by, you probably can't hear. You're probably all hugely aware of her history. What is probably less well known about Louie, however, is her strong connection with Dún Laoghaire, and that's why it's so important to see this bench here. She was of course elected as a councillor for the Labour Party into Dún Laoghaire in 1942, I think, Dennis, isn't that right? 1942 to 45 she served. So she's been commemorated elsewhere. We have a wonderful bench to her in my own constituency in Stephen's Green. If any of you haven't visited it, please do sit on that lovely bench. But it's long past time to see a bench for for Louie Bennett here in Dún Laoghaire, where she was, as I said, so closely associated, and where she was in fact a public representative. Of course, every worker, every family in Ireland owes her an enormous legacy through her work in 1945 on the laundry workers' strike, which brought about for the first time paid holidays, the fortnight's paid holidays for workers. So she had a huge impact in her lifetime, but it's lovely to see her commemorated locally here. And finally to say, this is part of that bigger project Deirdre mentioned about writing women back into history. We have the Rosie Hackett Bridge now across the Liffey. We have another bench here to Louie Bennett, but it's wonderful to see Dún Laoghaire, Rathdown County Council, Dún Laoghaire County Council doing so much now to commemorate women, and let's hope we see a lot more of it into the future. So thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I'm delighted to be here, and on that note, that barking celebration, Gur maith agaibh Clare. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful speech. And now I will call on An Cathaoirleach Denis O'Callaghan.
Good morning, everybody. You're all very welcome to Killiney Beach. The sun is breaking through, and I think we'll be okay. I want to, in particular, thank Ivana for coming out. I know she has a very busy schedule, and we really do appreciate her presence here this morning. My interest in Louie Bennett, I suppose, started in a conversation with our dear friend, the late Niamh Brannock, telling me that Louie Bennett represented the Killiney Ballybrack ward on Dún Laoghaire Borough Council, and that piqued my interest. That piqued my interest when she said that. And she went on to tell me that in 1996, when she was Minister for Education, she pioneered the launching of 2 stamps by An Post, one for Louie Bennett and the other for Lady Augusta Gregory. Those stamps were designed by the artist Evie Hone. And Niamh's husband Tom kindly gave me a copy of those stamps, which we have this morning, and a written hand note at the time from Niamh, which said, Louie Bennett, a stamp pioneered by Minister for Education Niamh Brannock, 93 to 97. Miss Bennett contested local election in Niamh's old ward, Blackrock, and took her seat in Dún Laoghaire Council. A long-time role model of Niamh's, who remembers asking Louie who at a Labour Women's National Council meeting. So that's very kind of you, Tom, and I'll pass that on to our archives section in the council. I also have a message from our Tuachtarán, Michael D. Higgins, which I'll read to you later. But for the purposes of today's event, I'll confine my remarks to the person Louie Bennett was, and I suppose her connection, as Ivana said, here locally to the Killiney area. Many books and pamphlets have been written in the past on Louie Bennett and her career, and I think it is very fitting that today, a stone's throw from where she lived, just over the railway line there in Sainsbury Avenue, that the location chosen is here on Killiney Beach, because I have no doubt, as Ivana alluded to, I have no doubt she would have spent a lot of her downtime here, walking, relaxing, maybe with her family, with her friends, with her friend Helen Chenevix, walking this beach, relaxing, taking in the beauty of Dublin Bay and the wonderful local amenity that we have here, Killiney Beach, which was on her doorstep. And I suppose if we close our eyes for a moment and go back in time, you could almost visualise her strolling on this beach, deep in thought, walking towards us asking what all the fuss is about. Louie Bennett was born on the 7th of January 1870 in Rathgar. She spent her early years on Temple Road in Blackrock. Her father, James Bennett, was a fine art auctioneer and valuer on Ormond Quay. Her mother, Susan Bolger, came from a family of some social standing in Dublin, whose own parents apparently disapproved of the marriage, as she came from British Army family stock, who did not approve of their daughter marrying into a trade. Louie Bennett was one of 10 children, funny enough. I didn't know that until recently. 5 brothers and 4 sisters. Her family moved to Killiney overlooking Dublin Bay, and not far from here where we're launching the memorial bench today. She lived in St. Bridget's, possibly from 1932 to 54, and next door to her, a house called Tigan was owned by her good friend, lifelong friend, Helen Chenevix, lived next door to her. The family home is on Seafield Road, a house called Gayfield, or Little Gayfield, I think, and she possibly lived there in her younger years. And I want to, at this stage, thank and acknowledge Michael McShane from the Killiney Historical Society, who pointed me in the right direction in relation to where the houses and that were located. And I really thank you for that, Michael, and for your interest in the Louie Bennett project. In the 1911 census, she was noted as residing at 144 Killiney as a suffragist, a pacifist and a trade unionist. Since she was a collaborator and friend of Helen Chenevix, they lived, obviously, as I said, beside one another just across the railway line, funny enough, on Sainsbury Avenue. It's just Carrie and myself visited it last week to have a look at the house. One of the houses is occupied, the other looks, Louise looks a bit derelict at the moment, but it's still there. And as Amanda said, she stood as a candidate in the 1920 election for the Killiney Ballybrack UCD South Ward, among the first women to stand as candidates for Labour, along with Helen Chenevix and Mary Catherine Kelly. She had the distinction of being the only Labour candidate in the greater Dunleary-Rathdown area, but in 1920 she was unfortunately unsuccessful. Then in 1942, Dunleary Borough Council, the aggregated vote saw Louie Bennett elected with George Dixon for Labour. And I suppose that, certainly in me, instills a sense of pride that she shared the ward represented today by both myself and Carrie Smith, and in the recent past by Eamon Gilmore, Pat Fitzgerald and Carrie's late father Frank Buckley, and other Labour councillors who have preceded us. And I suppose the details of Labour in Dunleary, there's a very good book which was recently published by Umiskin, written by Charles Callan, who's here this morning. You're very welcome, Charles, and Barry Desmond. It's a wonderful reference book for any political anoraks to read. Again, it's notable that Louie Bennett was the first Labour woman to serve as a councillor in Dunleary. And at the same time, her longtime friend Helen Chenevix was the first Labour woman elected to Dublin City Council. In the 1944 general election, she was one of 33 Labour candidates in the Dublin constituency. They were unfortunately unsuccessful, and in the 1945 local election, then aged 75, she did not seek re-election. Louie Bennett passed away at her home in Killiney on the 25th of November 1956, aged 86, and is buried in Dean's Grange Cemetery. And I want to acknowledge the presence this morning of the cemetery staff, John McCann in particular, who do the council tours of the cemeteries during the summer season, and Dermot Nolan and the staff. And if you would convey our thanks to the staff in Dean's Grange Cemetery and Shangana for the wonderful work they do. I know that John is currently because Helen Chenevix is also buried in Dean's Grange Cemetery, and John, who's down there at the back, looks after those very well, and we really appreciate the work that the staff of our cemeteries do. I will now, if you bear with me for a moment, read a message from Uachtaráin na hÉireann, Michael D. Higgins. And he says, "Dear Dennis, Mar Uachtaráin na hÉireann, I am writing to express my heartfelt support and appreciation for Dunleary-Rathdown County Council's decision to erect a seat in honour of Louie Bennett, a remarkable suffragette and lifelong campaigner for gender, equality, human rights and peace. Louie Bennett's dedication to the pursuit of social justice and her tireless efforts to promote gender equality and human rights have left an indelible mark on the history of Ireland. As a fierce campaigner of women's rights, in 1911 she co-founded, along with her lifelong friend and colleague Helen Chenevix, the Irish Women's Suffrage Federation. A committed trade unionist, Louie was the first female president of the Irish Trade Union Congress. She played a significant role in the Irish Women Workers' Union, helped to establish the Irish Women's Reform League, and was an important member of the Labour Party, having elected to Dún Laoghaire Borough Council in 1942. A lifelong pacifist, during the First World War, Louie was selected as the Irish representative to the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Her unwavering commitment to the principles of justice, equality and peace has inspired generations of Irish citizens to strive for a better society. The decision to install a seat in her honour is a fitting tribute to a woman who dedicated her life to the betterment of our country and its people. This seat will serve as a reminder of the values Louie held dear and will inspire all who visit it to continue the pursuit of equality, human rights and peace. May I extend my congratulations to Dún Laoghaire Rathdown County Council for the wonderful decision that recognising the importance of Louie Bennett's legacy constitutes, and for taking this meaningful step to honour her memory, reminding us all of the extraordinary contributions of this remarkable suffragette. Le Gach de Vein. Yours sincerely, Michael D. Higgins, Uachtarán na hÉireann, President of Ireland. In conclusion, I won't name the councillors again, but I do want to name check one former councillor who's with us this morning, and very welcome, former councillor Pat Fitzgerald, who is a relative of another Labour councillor for a long time, Jack Fitzgerald in Dún Laoghaire. You're very welcome, Paddy, to join us this morning. I just want to thank a few other people before I depart the stage. I want to particularly thank the Memorials Committee, as our Heritage Officer Deirdre outlined. We got it through the Memorials Committee to this final stage to this day. I want to thank in particular Deirdre Black, the Heritage Officer, who has done tremendous work on this project and is doing tremendous work for heritage in Dún Laoghaire Rathdown County. As I said, I want to thank the cemetery staff. I want to thank Emma from my office, who puts up with me and does tremendous work in setting the scene and makes it easy for me at events like this. I want to thank Barry Dempsey, who's around somewhere, for setting up the scene here this morning, and the photographer, obviously, Damien, who came along to be with us. There's tea and coffee, I understand, and a bit of sandwich and that. So thank you all for coming, and we really appreciate your presence here this morning. Thank you.
You have to unveil.
I think, do we have the official unveiling, the dramatic unveiling of the bench? You want to see it like that?
Contributed so much to Irish society, and that of which we enjoy the best. So I do
show some of the ropes.
Well, yeah.
And then just after that, as Dennis said, everyone's very welcome. Breakfast down here, stay around and mingle and enjoy our new memorial. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hey, man.